Introducing HydroClear. In this video, we're going to show you our water-based two-part system sealer. Now, if you've seen our Everclear videos, this is going to start off very similar. First, get off this pesky ring lock. A pair of pliers will work, even a pair of needle nose like I'm using here. I find that channel locks work best, but overall, once you get it started, you can just usually pop this right off. From there, it is just like the Everclear with a 3-to-1 ratio. So that's 3 parts of A to 1 part B. And this part A can will be short filled to compensate for that difference. Now, I'm going to pour it into this extra container. I find it just a little bit easier, especially in these 16-ounce containers. My paddle mixer just doesn't fit quite right. So I'll go ahead and pour it into this, and then I'm going to dump the whole part B into it. Again, if you want, you can use a smaller ratio. Just make sure you use 3 parts A to 1 part B, and you'll be just fine. I like to use the paddle mixer. I've used a stir stick, and it works pretty well, but the mechanical mixer, like the one I have here ready to go, is the best way to keep that matting agent suspended. So it's really a good idea to use a mechanical mixer. I use it at a little bit of a higher speed than the Everclear. It just tends to be a little bit thicker, the HydroClear is, and there's a good reason for that as well that we'll address later on. So just get it mixed pretty well. It just takes a couple minutes, and then you're ready to go. HydroClear can be used in a multitude of different ways. First, we're going to start off by spraying. Spraying will always be one of the most convenient and best looking ways to apply it. We're going to strain it through this paint strainer that's supplied. And we really recommend straining it just because it makes sure that your gun works well too. This is the Harbor Freight spray gun, 1.4 millimeter tip, and it's spraying about 55 pounds. Now, you can see it comes on really smooth, but it really kind of looks milky and white, and sometimes you can even consider it a little bit of a dotty appearance when you see it in person. All completely fine. One coat works fantastic spraying. This has an auto leveler, so it actually smooths out really well. So one coat, completely fine. Here we're going to use the crown sprayer with the heavy tip equipped. Essentially, it's the largest orifice. And you can see even out of this pre-valve, it's working phenomenally. You can see the dots a little bit more clear on here. Basically what I do to avoid that, go a little bit heavier, and it will be just fine. You want enough on there that you can actually see a little bit of that milky look because you need it to self-level. So don't flood it and go too heavy, but make sure you try and get a good coverage. And this is what I would consider a good coverage. You can actually also rub this on. I will say that rubbing takes the most dedication. So spraying is easy to do, brushing's easy to do, rolling's easy to do, but the rubbing on, you really need to know what you're getting into. So definitely do a test sample. It's 100% doable, but work in sections. So the other thing you need to fight is time. It will want to dry out naturally the more you rub this on. But if you don't get the ridges out soon enough, then it does become difficult to get them out. So just know what you're getting into. Do a test sample and you'll completely understand. It'll start snagging and wanting to grab, and you need to fight through that a little bit. Spraying, brushing, rolling, all completely fine doing one coat. You can do 2 coats if you want. Just make sure you wait 12 to 24 hours. It just takes a little bit for it to set up to accept a second coat. Now, with rubbing on, we highly recommend doing at least 2 coats. That you can get away with rubbing between about 4 to 6 hours. It dries faster because it goes on thinner, which is also why you need to do a second coat. So if you spray it on, roll it, brush it, go ahead, do 1 coat. It'll be just fine. It's actually a really strong product when you go 1 coat in those application methods. Rubbing on, definitely do 2 coats. So if we're going to roll it on, I'm going to use this 1/4-inch nap roller, which is lint free. And these are just the ones that we picked up from the Big Orange store. And basically, I'm just going to really get it saturated. I don't want to go too thick, just like spraying. I don't want to oversaturate it and get way too thick, because the thicker you get, the longer it takes to dry, and it overall not good. So just do it as thin you can, but get good coverage. And I know this is kind of contradictory advice here, but play around, do a test sample so you fully understand what I mean. There's a line between going too thin and too thick. So here I'm going back, making sure my roller is completely saturated, and I'll go back and clean the lines a little bit. But HydroClear self-levels so well that I don't see any of these lines, even the roller marks, when it's completely dry the next day. Now you'll see that my roller is actually getting a little dirty. This is because the patina that I used. This is slate black on aluminum, which causes kind of a powdery patina. So if you were going to try this on, say, Japanese brown over steel, or if you use it on Tiffany green on copper, something along those lines, you should expect the same thing. I just swapped out my roller and continued on my merry way. It was completely fine. So while the roller got a little bit dirty, everything else looked completely fine. So it's just something to keep in mind. Again, spraying would avoid that, but I wanted to show off rolling in this specific scenario as well. I'm going to do 2 coats of this. So I waited next day, actually, so as little as 12 hours, but it's just as easy to come in the next day. And I'm going to do a second coat. Now that first coat was a gloss. Doesn't quite look right to my eye on kind of a brown rustic look, so I'm going to go back over with a matte on this one, and you can see I'm just rolling in it right back over the top. I'm a fan of cross-linking, but in this specific case I couldn't even see my roller marks, so just go right over the top as well, and it works just fine. So dry time we know is dependent on temperature and humidity typically. Will also determine on thickness, right? When we rub it on thinner, it dries faster. But overall, we're going to stick to around a 12 to 24 when rolled or sprayed on or brushed on. Cure time is about 5 to 7 days. And here are our final samples. This is the torch patina on copper sprayed on with a HVLP sprayer. And then we have our kind of rustic, like with a ferric look. And that is sprayed on with a crown sprayer, followed by rubbing on the HydroClear just onto a bare piece of hot rolled steel. And then finally we have our slate black and ferric kind of look on aluminum, and that was rolled on, and you can see no roll line, so it's pretty nice that way. HydroClear is now available at www.sculptnouveau.com or by calling us at 760-432-8242.